The ancient laboratory had been dormant for 10,000 years before SG-1 found it. Buried beneath crystalline formations on P3X729, the facility hummed with residual power that made Captain Samantha Carter's handheld scanner spike into the red. Colonel Jack O'Neill had that look, the one that said he'd rather be fishing than standing in front of alien technology that Daniel Jackson was already touching despite repeated warnings. "Carter, please tell me that's not going to explode," O'Neill said, watching the massive ring-shaped structure in the chamber's center pulse with blue-white energy. "It's not a bomb, sir." Carter adjusted her scanner, frowning at the readings. "It's some kind of dimensional bridge. The energy signature is similar to the quantum mirror we encountered, but the power output is exponentially higher. Whatever this does, it reaches much farther." Daniel Jackson traced symbols on the ring's edge, his face illuminated by the ancient text glowing beneath his fingers. "This is incredible. The writing describes it as a thread weaver, something that connects parallel realities where Earth developed differently. The ancients were mapping alternate timelines. Didn't we decide alternate realities were bad after the last one almost got us killed?" O'Neill asked. "That was a parallel dimension, Jack. This is—" Daniel's hand pressed against the control crystal, and the facility screamed to life. The ring blazed brilliant white. Energy arced across the chamber as the device reached across dimensional barriers, searching, connecting, pulling. Through their radio link, Tilk's voice boomed from his position at the entrance. "O'Neill, I am detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the structure." "Carter, shut it down," O'Neill ordered. "I'm trying, sir, but it's locked into an automated sequence." Carter's fingers flew across the ancient control panel. "It's already established a connection. Something's coming through." The air inside the ring shimmered like heat distortion over desert sand. A figure materialized mid-stride, a man in a rust-colored jacket, sandy hair, athletic build, and immediately stumbled as he transitioned between realities. He hit the laboratory floor in a tactical roll that screamed military training, coming up in a defensive crouch, eyes scanning for threats with professional efficiency. "Hands where I can see them!" O'Neill commanded, P90 raised. The man raised his hands slowly, calmly. "Easy. Colonel Steve Austin, United States Air Force. I don't know where I am, but I'm not your enemy." "Another colonel," O'Neill muttered. "Great. Name, rank, and serial number don't mean much when you just materialized out of thin air." "Carter?" Before Carter could respond, the ring pulsed again. Something massive came through, 8 feet of fur and muscle that roared as it crossed the dimensional threshold. The creature stumbled, disoriented, and one massive hand slammed into the ancient machinery. Sparks exploded across the control panel. "Bigfoot," Austin said, surprisingly calm. "Stand down. We're not in danger." The Sasquatch turned toward Austin's voice, its roar fading to a confused rumble. Daniel had frozen mid-step, archaeological curiosity warring with basic survival instinct. Tilk appeared in the doorway, staff weapon raised. "Jack," Daniel said carefully, "is that actually Bigfoot?" "I'm more concerned about how the colonel knows its name," O'Neill replied, P90 still aimed at both newcomers. "Austin, was it? Want to explain why you're on a first-name basis with a cryptid?" Austin's jaw tightened. "It's classified. So's this facility, so start talking or—" The ring exploded. Energy feedback from Bigfoot's impact on the controls overloaded the ancient systems in a cascade failure that sent everyone diving for cover. When the smoke cleared, the Threadweaver was a melted ruin, and their way home, both theirs and Austin's, was gone. 6 hours later, Steve Austin sat in an interrogation room at Stargate Command, 28 levels beneath Cheyenne Mountain, trying to process that he wasn't in Colorado anymore. Not his Colorado, anyway. The base was similar enough to be familiar, different enough to be deeply wrong. The uniforms were right, the military protocols recognizable, but the technology glimpsed during his transport from the gate room had been decades beyond anything the OSI possessed. The door opened. Colonel O'Neill entered with another man in BDUs, General Hammond, according to the name tape, and a woman in civilian clothes who looked at Steve like he was a physics problem she intended to solve. "Colonel Austin," Hammond began, taking a seat across the table. "I've reviewed your service record, or what little we can verify. Astronaut, test pilot, survived a crash that should have killed you. That was 1973 in your timeline. Here, it's 2001, and we've been dialing the Stargate for 5 years. "The what?" "The ring you came through wasn't a Stargate," the woman said. "She had captain's bars and a name tag that read Carter. But it used similar technology. We've been exploring the galaxy through a network of Stargates for 5 years now. We've made contact with dozens of alien species, fought parasitic aliens called the Goa'uld who enslave humans across the galaxy, and discovered technology from a race called the Ancients who built the Gate network millions of years ago." "Colonel Austin, you're not on another Earth. You're on an Earth that's been fighting an interstellar war." Steve processed that. Oscar Goldman had briefed him on impossible missions before, but this was several orders of magnitude beyond OSI's usual parameters. "And Bigfoot?" "The Sasquatch is in a containment cell," Hammond said carefully, "under sedation and monitored by armed guards. Colonel O'Neill tells me you claimed it wasn't hostile." "He isn't," Steve corrected. "And he's not actually a Sasquatch. He's an alien android, artificial being built by extraterrestrials who crashed in the California mountains. I've worked with him before. Complicated situation." Carter leaned forward, eyes bright with scientific interest. "An alien android? Using what technology base? What's his power source? And more importantly, Colonel, what exactly are you?" "Our medical scans detected extensive cybernetic implants. Your right arm, both legs, your left eye, that's not 1970s technology. That's barely possible with what we have now." Steve met her gaze. In his world, the bionic program was the most classified project in the United States. Here, apparently, these people reverse-engineered alien technology before breakfast. "I'm bionic," he said simply. "The crash destroyed my arm, legs, and eye. The OSI rebuilt me. $6 million man." O'Neill whistled low. "Inflation's going to hit that hard." If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. Hammond folded his hands on the table. "Colonel Austin, the device that brought you here was destroyed. Until we can determine if there's a way to send you back, you're stuck in our reality. However, given your military background and unique capabilities, I'm prepared to offer you an opportunity. We need good people. People who can handle the impossible." "And Bigfoot?" Steve asked. "That depends," Hammond said, "on whether you can convince us he's an asset rather than a threat. First, though, I think it's time you met the rest of SG-1 and saw exactly what we do here." The general stood, and Steve followed. Through the facility's corridors, past military personnel who moved with the purposeful efficiency Steve recognized, to an observation window overlooking the most incredible thing he'd ever seen. A massive ring dominated a concrete bunker, 30 feet of alien metal inscribed with symbols, surrounded by a ramp and technical equipment. As Steve watched, the ring burst to life. 7 chevrons locked in sequence with mechanical precision, and then the impossible happened. A shimmering blue event horizon exploded outward before settling into a vertical pool of liquid light. 4 figures walked through the event horizon and disappeared. "Welcome to Stargate Command," O'Neill said, appearing beside him. "That thing goes to other planets. We step through it, meet aliens, shoot bad guys, and try not to cause intergalactic incidents. Usually fail at that last one. Think you can handle it, bionic man?" Steve Austin stared at the Stargate, feeling his bionic eye automatically focus and record. His world had been covert operations and classified missions to protect American interests. This world was defending humanity itself. "I'll do my best," he said. Somewhere below, In a reinforced containment cell, Bigfoot stirred against sedation. Ancient technology hummed in his alien systems, recognizing something familiar in the Naquadah radiation that saturated this facility. Recognition protocols activated. Memory cores that predated human civilization flickered to awareness. The Stargate's builders were known to his creators, and they had left messages. The briefing room felt familiar to Steve Austin. Standard military setup, projection screen, classified mission atmosphere, but the content was pure science fiction. Captain Carter stood at the screen, clicking through images of alien worlds, parasitic snake creatures, and Egyptian god impersonators who were very much real and very much hostile. The Goa'uld are parasitic organisms that take human hosts, Carter explained, displaying an image that made Steve's stomach tighten. They burrow into the base of the skull and wrap around the spinal column, taking complete control of the body. The host is still conscious but imprisoned in their own mind. The Goa'uld possess genetic memory, absorbing knowledge from previous generations of symbiotes. They've enslaved humans across the galaxy for thousands of years, Daniel Jackson added, adjusting his glasses. They seeded humans on hundreds of worlds through the Stargate network, establishing themselves as gods from ancient mythologies. R.A. Apophis Hathor, all real, all Goa'uld System Lords commanding vast armies. Steve studied the images with his bionic eye, automatically recording everything at Carter's nod of approval. The technology was beyond anything Oscar Goldman had briefed him on, but the strategic situation was clear. Humanity was massively outgunned in an interstellar war most people didn't know existed. What about their weaknesses? Steve asked. O'Neill grinned. I like him already. They're arrogant, they fight amongst themselves constantly, and they rely heavily on intimidation. Their weapons, staff weapons, are designed to terrorize rather than kill efficiently. We use P90s and tactics. Usually works. Usually? Sometimes we improvise, O'Neill said. Carter blows something up, Daniel talks us out of trouble, Tilk shoots things. Speaking of which, the door opened and a large Jaffa warrior entered. Goa'uld symbol tattooed on his forehead, carrying himself with quiet dignity. Steve's tactical assessment kicked in automatically. Trained fighter, disciplined, dangerous. Colonel Austin, Hammond said. This is Tilk, a Jaffa warrior and member of SG-1. The Jaffa were enslaved by the Goa'uld and genetically modified to carry their larval young. Tilk was first primed to the System Lord Apophis before he defected to help us. Tilk inclined his head respectfully. Colonel Austin, your bionic enhancements are impressive. I sense honoring you. Thank you, Steve said, standing to meet the Jaffa's gaze. I look forward to working with you. Indeed. However, I must inquire about your companion. The creature you call Bigfoot possesses technology one do not recognize. General Hammond, I recommend extreme caution. Hammond nodded gravely. Which brings us to the other issue. Colonel Austin, our medical team has examined the being you arrived with. Dr. Fraser has some concerning findings. The base CMO Dr. Janet Fraser entered with a tablet full of skin data. Colonel, the entity designated Bigfoot isn't biological. It's entirely artificial, an android constructed with technology more advanced than anything in our database. Its power source is unknown, its structural composition doesn't match any known allo, and there are active communication systems inside it that have been attempting to transmit signals since it arrived. Transmitting to who? O'Neill demanded. Unknown, Fraser admitted. But Captain Carter detected the signals and contained them. For now. Steve leaned forward. Doctor, is he damaged? The dimensional transport was violent. Several internal systems show disruption. Whatever brought you here scrambled some of his programming. He's been calmer, less responsive to external commands. Almost like he's waking up. That matched what Steve had observed in their last encounter. Bigfoot had been increasingly independent, making choices that contradicted his alien master's programming. The dimensional pull might have severed that control entirely. I need to see him, Steve said. Hammond considered this. Supervised visit. Colonel O'Neill, assemble your team. If that thing poses a threat, I want SG-1 ready to respond. The containment cell was reinforced concrete and steel, designed to hold dangerous aliens. Through the observation window, Bigfoot sat motionless on the floor, massive frame hunched, head down. Sedation had worn off, but he hadn't moved aggressively. Steve entered slowly, hands visible, movements calm. Behind him, O'Neill and Tilk waited with weapons ready but not raised. Carter monitored from the observation room, her equipment tracking every energy fluctuation from the alien android. "Hey, big guy," Steve said quietly. "I know you're confused. So am I. We're not home anymore." Bigfoot's head lifted. His eyes, too intelligent for an animal, too uncertain for a machine, focused on Steve with something that might have been recognition or relief. "Colonel, his power signature just spiked." Carter's voice crackled through the intercom. "He's accessing systems that were dormant before. I'm reading energy patterns similar to, oh my god, similar to the Ancients' technology. The Stargate itself." Bigfoot stood slowly, carefully, clearly trying not to appear threatening. He moved to the wall and placed one massive hand against the concrete. His palm glowed with soft blue light, and ancient symbols materialized on the surface, the same writing they'd found in the laboratory. Daniel's voice burst through the intercom, excited and urgent. "Jack, those symbols! He's writing in ancient. It says, 'Builders of the Path. We came before. We remember.'" "Carter, what's he saying?" O'Neill asked, P90 now partially raised. I think Bigfoot's creators knew the ancients," Carter breathed. "Or they were contemporaries. If his technology base predates the Goa'uld." Bigfoot turned to Steve and spoke. Not words exactly, but modulated sounds that carried meaning through harmonics and resonance. Steve's bionic ear, calibrated for enhanced audio processing, picked up layers of information in the vocalizations. "He says he's been asleep," Steve translated, surprising himself. "His masters put commands in him, made him guard their crashed ship. But the ship is gone now, left behind in another reality. He doesn't have to guard anymore. He's asking what he's supposed to be now." The room fell silent. A creature, an android, built by aliens who might have known the ancients themselves, experiencing freedom for the first time and asking the most human question possible: what am I without my purpose? O'Neill lowered his weapon slightly. "Well, that's not what I expected." "Sir," Carter said over the intercom, "if his creators had contact with the ancients, if their technology is compatible with ancient devices, he could be invaluable. He might be able to interface with ancient systems we can't access. Or he could be a Trojan horse." O'Neill countered. "Advanced tech, mysterious creators, shows up right when an ancient device activates? I've seen this movie. It doesn't end well." Tilk stepped forward, studying Bigfoot with his head tilted. "I have faced many Goa'uld schemes, O'Neill. This does not bear their mark. The creature is lost, not deceptive. I recognize the look. I wore it when I first defied Apophis." Steve moved closer to Bigfoot, maintaining eye contact. "If I vouch for him, if I work with him under your supervision, will you give him a chance to prove himself? He's saved my life before. Whatever his creators intended, he's choosing differently now." Hammond's voice came through the intercom, carrying command authority. "Colonel Austin, you've been here less than 12 hours. You're asking me to trust an alien android of unknown origin based on past interactions in a different reality?" "Yes, sir, I am." The general was quiet for a long moment. "Dr. Fraser, what's your medical opinion?" "General, if this being is truly gaining autonomy from its original programming, then it's experiencing something analogous to consciousness. Medically and ethically, I'd recommend treating him as a sentient being, not a weapon." "Carter?" "Sir, the scientific value alone justifies careful study. And if he can help us understand ancient technology better." "Tilk?" I believe Colonel Austin speaks truth. The android shows no signs of aggression. I recommend trust, with vigilance. O'Neill? Jack O'Neill looked at Bigfoot, then at Steve, then sighed the sigh of a man who'd made too many impossible decisions. Against my better judgment, which Carter will tell you is usually wrong anyway, I say we give the big guy a chance. But he's Austin's responsibility. Anything goes wrong, it's on both of them. Hammond's decision came firm and final. Very well. Colonel Austin, your companion will be released into your custody under constant surveillance. One wrong move, one threatening action, and we shut this down. Understood? Understood, General. Thank you. Bigfoot's hand pressed against the wall again. More ancient symbols appeared. Gratitude. We'll prove worthy. We'll help guard new path. Steve placed his bionic hand on the glass, and Bigfoot mirrored the gesture from inside. Two beings rebuilt by advanced technology, both trying to find purpose in an impossible situation. Welcome to the weird, O'Neill muttered. Carter, get the android some pants or something. We have standards. The SGC armory hummed with activity as SG teams prepped for missions. Steve Austin stood in borrowed BDUs, watching Captain Carter explain the tactical vest and equipment loadout with professional efficiency. His bionic eye tracked each piece of gear: P-90 submachine gun, tactical radio, GDO transmitter, Beretta sidearm, combat knife. Standard loadout for gate travel, Carter said, handing him the vest. The P-90 is compact, high rate of fire, excellent for close quarters. We've found it more effective than staff weapons in most situations. Steve checked the weapon with practiced familiarity. 5.7mm? You know your weapons. Most gate teams carry the P-90 now. It's saved our lives more times than I can count. She paused, studying him with scientific curiosity. Colonel, your bionic systems, how do they handle different environments? Extreme temperatures, low oxygen, high radiation? They're resilient, Steve said. The eye adjusts to light levels automatically. The arm and legs have redundant systems. I've operated in deserts, Arctic conditions, underwater. But I'll admit, different universe physics might be a factor I haven't tested. That's what concerns me. The Stargate dematerializes your body, transmits it as energy through a wormhole, and reassembles you on the other side. We've never sent someone with extensive cybernetic implants through. There could be calibration issues, data corruption in your optical systems, mechanical stress. Captain, Steve interrupted gently. I appreciate the concern. But I didn't ask to be here, and I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you risk your people. If my bionics fail, I'll adapt. Carter smiled slightly. You sound like the Colonel. He hates sitting out missions too. Across the armory, O'Neill was having a different conversation with a very large problem. Bigfoot stood in the center of the room, surrounded by equipment that wasn't designed for 8-foot alien androids. The quartermaster looked simultaneously frustrated and fascinated. Sir, we don't have tactical gear in his size, the sergeant said helplessly. And I'm not sure body armor would help. Dr. Fraser's scans show his exterior is already more resistant than Kevlar. What about communications? O'Neill asked. Can he use a radio? His physiology isn't compatible with standard earpieces. But Captain Carter thinks he might be able to receive transmissions directly. His internal systems include communication arrays. Bigfoot made a low rumbling sound and tapped his head, then pointed to the radio equipment. The gesture was clear. I can hear you. Great. O'Neill muttered. Telepathic Sasquatch. Why not? He raised his voice. Bigfoot, if you can understand me, nod once. Bigfoot nodded deliberately. Can you use weapons? Firearms? Bigfoot shook his head, then made a gesture encompassing his hands. The meaning was obvious. His strength was the weapon. Fair enough. Just remember, you're with us, you follow orders. Austin says you're good people. Don't make him a liar. Bigfoot placed one massive hand over his chest in what might have been a salute or a promise. Daniel Jackson appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath, carrying a laptop covered in notes. "Jack, I've been researching the symbols Bigfoot wrote. The ancient database has references to Watchers, an older race that predated even the ancients' arrival in this galaxy. They built guardians to protect their outposts. If Bigfoot's creators were these Watchers..." Daniel, focus. "Does this help us or hurt us?" "It means Bigfoot might be able to activate ancient technology we can't access. The Watchers and Ancients had compatible tech bases. Some ancient outposts have security systems keyed to Watcher signatures. With him, we might reach sites that have been locked for millions of years." O'Neill processed that. "So he's a walking ancient key?" "Potentially. But Jack, there's something else. The Watchers disappeared before the Ancients ascended. Their outposts were abandoned or destroyed. If Bigfoot's masters came from this galaxy originally, then whatever caused them to leave might still be out there. Fantastic. Add it to the list of things trying to kill us." The briefing for P4X889 was straightforward. Survey mission: check for Naquata deposits. Establish peaceful contact with the indigenous population if present. Low risk. Perfect for testing whether Steve and Bigfoot could function as part of a gate team. Hammond stood at the head of the conference table, reviewing the MALP data. "The planet shows Earth-like conditions, temperate climate, no obvious signs of Goa'uld presence. SG-1 will conduct the initial survey with Colonel Austin and the android accompanying." Colonel O'Neill has mission command. "Sir," O'Neill said, "just to be clear, if things go sideways, Austin and Bigfoot are not expendable. They're part of the team for this op." "Understood, Colonel. But if their presence compromises the mission..." "I'll handle it," O'Neill assured him. "We've worked with stranger." Tilk raised an eyebrow. "I am uncertain whether I should be offended, O'Neill. You're at least humanoid, Tilk. Bigfoot is, well, he's Bigfoot." Steve leaned forward. "General, I've run covert operations in hostile territory. I understand mission priority and chain of command. I won't be a liability." "See that you're not." "Dismissed. SG-1 gates out in 30 minutes. The gate room thrummed with controlled energy. Steve stood on the ramp beside Bigfoot, watching the inner ring of the Stargate spin as Carter dialed the 7-symbol address from the control room above. Each chevron locked with a satisfying clang of ancient machinery. "Chevron 7, locked," the technician announced. The gate erupted. The unstable vortex, the Kawoosh, as O'Neill called it, exploded outward in a wave of pure energy that would disintegrate anything in its path, then settled into a shimmering vertical pool of liquid light. Steve's bionic eye struggled to focus on it, the sensors confused by the event horizon's quantum nature. "First time's always weird," O'Neill said, checking his P90. "You walk through a puddle and come out on another planet. Try not to overthink it." "How do you not overthink that?" Steve asked. "Practice. Lots of practice. And therapy. Carter won't admit she needs therapy." O'Neill started up the ramp. "SG-1, move out." Daniel and Tilk followed, disappearing into the event horizon without hesitation. Carter gave Steve an encouraging nod before stepping through. Steve glanced at Bigfoot. The android stared at the Stargate with what might have been wonder or recognition. His hand reached out toward the shimmering surface, trembling slightly. "You feel something?" Steve asked quietly. Bigfoot nodded, then touched his chest and pointed at the gate. The gesture was clear. "This feels like home." "Then let's go find out why." Steve checked his GDO transmitter one final time and walked toward the event horizon. The transition was instantaneous and eternal. His body dissolved into energy, consciousness fragmenting across subatomic distances, then snapping back into coherent matter on the other side. His bionic systems flickered, recalibrating, his eye flashing error codes before stabilizing. He stumbled slightly as he emerged on the other side, catching himself with his bionic legs. The world that greeted him was not Earth. Twin suns hung in an amber sky. Massive trees with purple foliage surrounded the Stargate, their trunks wider than redwoods. The air smelled of ozone and something floral. A stone DHD stood beside the gate, its control crystals glowing softly. "Welcome to P4X889, O'Neill said. "Please keep your hands and feet inside the reality at all times." Bigfoot emerged behind Steve, and the planet itself seemed to react. The trees rustled despite no wind. The DHD's glow intensified. And somewhere in the forest, something massive moved through the undergrowth, responding to the android's presence. Carter's scanner screamed warnings. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures converging on our position." "Whatever's out there, it knows we're here. Defensive positions," O'Neill ordered. "Austin, keep Bigfoot close. Daniel, tell me this is friendly natives and not something that wants to eat us." The forest erupted with movement. Not one creature but dozens, constructs similar to Bigfoot but different, ancient guardians emerging from dormancy. They surrounded the gate in seconds, not attacking but watching, waiting. The largest stepped forward and made sounds similar to Bigfoot's harmonics. Bigfoot responded, a conversation in frequencies that made Steve's bionic ear ache with overload. "Carter?" O'Neill asked tensely. "Translation? I'm picking up data transfer on wavelengths we can't hear. They're communicating through radio frequencies and sound simultaneously. It's Jack. I think they recognize him. I think these are his people." Bigfoot turned to Steve and made a simple gesture. "Safe. Family." The Guardians began to lower their defensive stances. One approached the gate's DHD and touched it. Ancient symbols appeared in the air as holograms, spinning around the Stargate like a three-dimensional computer interface. Daniel's eyes went wide. "Those are ancient symbols mixed with something older. This isn't just a survey planet. This is a Watcher outpost. A intact one." Steve's mission instincts kicked in. "Sir, recommend we proceed with extreme caution. This is first contact with technology we don't understand. Way ahead of you." O'Neill muttered, P90 still ready but lowered. "Bigfoot, can you ask them what they want?" Bigfoot made more harmonic sounds. The lead guardian responded, then did something impossible. It reached towards Steve and projected a hologram between them. The image showed the solar system from space, then zoomed to show the Stargate network across the galaxy, billions of connections. Red markers appeared on dozens of worlds, warnings, danger indicators. And at the center of the map, a gate address glowed with urgent significance. "They're showing us something important," Carter said, recording frantically. "A warning about specific gate addresses. And one particular location they want us to see." The hologram focused on the address, and additional symbols appeared. Even without translation, the meaning was clear. This place threatens all. This must be stopped. Steve felt his tactical assessment shift into high gear. They'd come for a survey mission and stumbled into something vastly more significant. The Watchers were trying to warn them about a threat. And somewhere in the galaxy, at the address the Guardians marked, something dangerous was waiting. The briefing room at SGC felt different after P4X889. Steve stood beside a holographic projector displaying the Watcher data that Bigfoot had helped download from the Guardian outpost. The information was fragmentary, millions of years old, corrupted by time, but the warnings were unmistakable. The gate address the Guardians highlighted as P2X338, Carter explained, manipulating the hologram. According to the Watcher database, it was once a joint research facility between their civilization and the Ancients. The project was abandoned suddenly, and the outpost was marked as Quarantine Level Omega, their highest danger classification. Hammond leaned forward. "What were they researching?" "That's where the data gets fragmented," Daniel said, adjusting his glasses as he studied the ancient text. "Something about consciousness transfer and synthetic ascension." The Watchers and Ancients were trying to achieve what the Ancients eventually did naturally, evolving to a higher plane of existence. But this was forced, technological. And it went wrong. O'Neill concluded. Because of course it did. Nothing ancient ever goes smoothly. Steve had been silent, processing the implications with his OSI training. General, the Guardians weren't just warning us. They were asking for help. Whatever's on P2X338, it's been dormant for millions of years. But something's activated it recently. How recently? Hammond asked. Carter pulled up energy readings. Within the last 3 months. We've detected unusual subspace fluctuations from that sector, but we classified them as natural phenomena. Now I think something at that facility is powering up. Tilk's expression darkened. General Hammond, if the Goa'uld discover this facility before we investigate, they'll weaponize it. Hammond finished grimly. Colonel O'Neill, SG-1 will conduct reconnaissance of P2X338. Colonel Austin, your connection to the Watcher Guardians makes you an asset on this mission. Are you prepared for hostile contact? Steve met the general's gaze steadily. Yes, sir. But I recommend bringing Bigfoot. If the facility's security systems are Watcher-based, he might be the only one who can access them safely. The android has proven himself useful. Tilk added. And his strength would be valuable if we encounter resistance. O'Neill looked less convinced. I'm still not comfortable bringing an 8-foot alien android we've known for 2 days into a potentially hostile ancient lab. But I'm outvoted, and Carter's giving me her "you're being unreasonable" look. I am not, Carter started. You are. I know that look. O'Neill turned to Hammond. Sir, if we're doing this, I want full tactical loadout. Claymores, C4, the works. If that facility is too dangerous, we're blowing it and sealing the gate from our end. Hammond nodded approval. Authorized. SG-3 and SG-5 will be on standby for immediate backup. You gate out in 4 hours. Dismissed. Steve found Bigfoot in an unused storage bay that had been converted into temporary quarters. The android sat motionless, but Steve's bionic eye detected micro-movements in his systems, processing, thinking, maybe even dreaming if that was possible for artificial consciousness. Hey, Steve said quietly. You okay? Bigfoot's head turned, and he made a low harmonic sound that Steve's ear interpreted as acknowledgement. Then the android stood and moved to a wall, pressing his hand against it. Ancient symbols appeared, glowing softly. Steve activated his bionic eye's recording function. What are you trying to tell me? More symbols formed, arranging themselves into something that looked like a family tree or organizational chart. At the top, a symbol that Daniel had identified as Watchers. Below it, branches showing different types of guardians, different purposes. Bigfoot pointed to one branch, then to himself. The symbol translated roughly as Seeker, or Finder. Not a warrior guardian like the others on P4X889, but something designed for exploration and discovery. You were built to find things, Steve said. Lost technology? Missing outposts? Bigfoot nodded, then pointed to another symbol, one that pulsed with red warning indicators. This guardian type was labeled Keeper, or Warden, and it was associated with P2X338. There's another guardian at the facility, Steve realized. One designed to keep something locked away. Bigfoot's gestures became more urgent. He pointed to the Keeper symbol, then made a braking motion with his hands. The meaning was clear: the Keeper is failing. Or failed. Something is escaping. Steve felt cold despite the climate-controlled environment. That's what activated the facility. The containment is breaking down. A door hissed open, and Carter entered carrying a tablet and her scientific equipment. Colonel Austin, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to calibrate your bionic systems before the mission. The gate transition showed some strain on your optical implants. Actually, Captain, your timing is perfect. Bigfoot just told me something important. Steve explained the symbols and Bigfoot's warnings about the Keeper Guardian. Carter's expression shifted from scientific interest to tactical concern. If there's a Guardian specifically designed to contain something at P2X338, and it's failing after millions of years. She pulled up data on her tablet. I need to inform the Colonel. This changes our mission profile significantly. Bigfoot made more sounds, and this time Carter's equipment picked up the harmonic patterns. She'd been working on a translation algorithm using the Watcher data. He's saying the Keeper will recognize him as another Guardian. It might allow us access to the containment systems. Carter looked at Bigfoot with new respect. You're not just a key to ancient technology. You're a diplomatic passport to Watcher security protocols. The android nodded slowly, then made a gesture that even without translation was clearly somber, dangerous, but necessary. 4 hours later, SG-1 stood in the gate room with full combat loadout. Steve wore his tactical vest with P90 and additional magazines, feeling the familiar weight of mission preparation. Bigfoot stood beside him, unarmed but radiating quiet determination. O'Neill did a final equipment check. Remember, this is recon only. We go in, assess the situation, get out. Nobody plays hero, nobody touches ancient doomsday devices. Carter, that especially means you. Sir, I resent that implication, Carter said without heat. You blew up a sun once. That was to save a solar system. My point stands. O'Neill looked at Steve and Bigfoot. Austin, keep the big guy close. If things get weird, and they will get weird, fall back to the gate. Bigfoot, if you sense something wrong with the Keeper Guardian, you tell us immediately. Understood? Bigfoot nodded firmly. The gate began dialing. Steve felt his pulse increase slightly, bionic systems compensating automatically. This was different from OSI missions. The stakes weren't just national security but potentially galactic. Oscar Goldman would never believe this debrief. Chevron 7, locked. The event horizon exploded into existence, that impossible pool of shimmering energy that led to another world. Through it, billions of miles would pass in seconds. SG-1, move out! O'Neill commanded. They went through in order, O'Neill, Carter, Daniel, Tilk, then Steve. The transition felt smoother this time, his bionics adapting to the quantum disassembly. He emerged on P2X338 with weapon ready, scanning for threats. The planet was dead. Not barren, dead. The sky was gray, the ground cracked and lifeless. No vegetation, no water, no movement. The only structure visible was a massive ancient facility built into a mountainside half a mile from the gate, its architecture sharp and geometric against the desolate landscape. Bigfoot emerged last and immediately froze. His systems flared with energy, sensors reacting to something the others couldn't detect. He made a low, distressed sound. What is it? Steve asked. Carter's scanner erupted with warnings. Energy spike from the facility. Something just detected our arrival. From the ancient complex, lights began activating in sequence, one window after another illuminating with cold blue radiance. And from deep within the structure, something screamed. A sound that was part machine, part anguish, broadcast across frequencies that made every radio crackle. The Keeper had sensed them. And after millions of years of isolation, guarding whatever horror the ancients and Watchers had locked away, it was not welcoming visitors. Contact! Defensive positions! O'Neill ordered, raising his P90. The facility's entrance irised open, and something emerged into the gray light. It was similar to Bigfoot in basic construction but larger, heavier, covered in armor plating that looked like it had been damaged and repaired countless times. One arm ended in what was clearly a weapon. The other was malformed, sparking with electrical damage. The Keeper Guardian locked its sensors on them and raised its weapon arm. But it didn't fire. Instead, it broadcast harmonics that made Bigfoot step forward despite Steve's warning hand on his shoulder. Colonel, they're communicating! Carter said urgently. The Keeper it's asking for help. After millions of years, it can't maintain containment alone anymore. It needs another Guardian. Bigfoot responded with his own harmonics, and the exchange that followed was too fast for translation. But the body language was universal, desperation meeting willingness, a burden shared. The Keeper lowered its weapon. Then it turned back toward the facility and gestured for them to follow. Whatever it had been guarding for millions of years, whatever the ancients and watchers had locked away, they were about to discover if it was still contained. Steve checked his P90's magazine and followed, his bionic systems recording everything. Some missions, you walked into knowing they'd change everything. This was one of them. The facility's interior defied human architecture. Corridors twisted at angles that hurt to look at, walls inscribed with ancient and watcher symbols that pulsed with warning red light. The Keeper Guardian led them deeper, its damaged arms sparking occasionally, each step accompanied by mechanical grinding that suggested centuries of wear. Steve's bionic eye struggled to focus on some surfaces, the quantum properties of ancient construction interfering with his optics. Carter moved beside him, scanner working frantically to map the layout. The energy signatures are off the charts, she whispered. Whatever they're containing, it's generating power levels comparable to a ZPM. Maybe higher. That's bad? Steve asked. A ZPM, zero-point module, is an ancient power source that extracts energy from subspace. They can power cities for thousands of years. If something is generating that much energy naturally, Carter's expression was grim. It shouldn't exist. The Keeper stopped at a massive door inscribed with symbols even Daniel couldn't fully translate. The Guardian placed its intact hand against the control panel, and systems that had been dormant for eons screamed to life. The door split apart, revealing a chamber that made everyone stop. The containment room was spherical, easily 300 feet in diameter. At its center, suspended in a matrix of energy beams and ancient force fields, was a crystalline structure the size of a small building. It pulsed with inner light, violet, blue, gold, colors that shifted and changed in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Oh my God!" Daniel breathed. "It's beautiful. It's terrifying," O'Neill corrected, P90 raised but useless against something contained by technology they barely understood. Bigfoot moved forward slowly, drawn to the crystal. The Keeper made warning sounds, but Bigfoot responded with calm harmonics. Their exchange was rapid, urgent. "Carter, translation?" O'Neill demanded. She worked her portable computer, the Watcher linguistic database struggling to process. "The Keeper is explaining, the crystal isn't a power source. It's a consciousness. Multiple consciousnesses. The ancients and Watchers were experimenting with forced ascension, trying to artificially evolve beings to a higher plane. But the subjects didn't ascend. They became trapped. Thousands of minds locked in a quantum crystalline matrix, unable to die, unable to ascend, unable to return to physical form." Steve felt his stomach turn. They're alive in there? Trapped for millions of years? Aware. Conscious. In agony? Daniel's voice was hollow. The ancients called it their greatest failure. They couldn't free the subjects, couldn't end their suffering. So they contained them and assigned the Keeper to ensure they never escaped. Tilk studied the energy matrix. If the containment fails, the consciousness would try to find new hosts, Carter said, reading data streams. Thousands of desperate, ancient minds seeking bodies. They'd overwrite anyone they encountered, consuming the original consciousness. And they can transmit through the Stargate network. O'Neill's tactical assessment was instant. We need to destroy this. Now. Where's the structural weak point? Sir, we can't just destroy it. Those are living beings. In eternal torment, Carter. And if they get loose, they'll possess people across the galaxy looking for bodies that can hold them. We blow the facility, collapse the mountain, bury this thing so deep nobody finds it again. Wait. Daniel stepped forward. Jack, there has to be another way. The ancients preserved them for a reason. Maybe there's a way to actually free them, help them ascend properly. The crystal pulsed violently. The containment fields flickered. Carter? O'Neill asked tensely. The crystal detected us. It's trying to communicate. Or break free. I can't tell which. Carter's scanner was screaming warnings now. The Keeper's power systems are failing. It's been maintaining this containment alone for millions of years. It's dying. The Keeper Guardian turned to Bigfoot and made a series of sounds that needed no translation. The meaning was clear in its body language. I'm failing. You must take my place. Bigfoot looked at the Keeper, then at the crystal, then back at Steve. In his alien features, Steve saw something achingly human, fear and determination fighting each other. No, Steve said firmly. You're not trapping yourself here for millions of years. We'll find another solution. Bigfoot made gentle harmonics, gratitude mixed with resignation. He gestured to the crystal, to the Keeper, to the containment field. The choice was already made, thousands suffer. One guardian can end that. Fair trade. Absolutely not, O'Neill said. Nobody's volunteering for eternal guard duty. Carter, C4 placement options? Sir, if we destabilize the containment without proper shutdown, the consciousness could escape in the explosion. We need to overload the power systems in a controlled sequence to ensure complete obliteration. Then we do that. Daniel, stop looking at me like I'm the bad guy. Sometimes the mission is making sure nobody else suffers. Daniel's jaw tightened. And sometimes the mission is finding a way to actually help. The ancients failed these people once. We could do better. With what? Hope and good intentions? That crystal has been here for millions of years, Daniel. We're not solving it in 5 minutes. The containment field failed. Not completely, but enough. One of the energy beams flickered and died, and the crystal surged against its bonds. Light exploded from it, and consciousness, ancient, desperate, mad with isolation, reached out. It found Bigfoot first. The android staggered as something invaded his systems, trying to overwrite his programming, searching for meat and neurons that didn't exist in his artificial construction. Bigfoot's harmonics became static-filled screams. No! Steve ran forward, his bionic arm reaching for Bigfoot. The consciousness touched Steve's bionics and recoiled. His cybernetic systems weren't fully biological either, not enough to host properly. But it tried anyway, probing at his optical implant, his neural interfaces. Steve's vision exploded with error codes and ancient symbols. His bionic eye was being hacked by something that predated human civilization. He felt thoughts that weren't his own scratching at his consciousness. Please help us, we're dying, we've been dying forever, please anyone end this. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. Tilk, grab the kernel. Daniel, help me with the Keeper's control interface. Tilk's strong arms pulled Steve backward, breaking the connection. Steve gasped, his eye rebooting, vision cycling through spectrum modes before stabilizing. Bigfoot was on his knees, systems fighting the invasion with firewalls that hadn't existed when he was built. The dimensional travel had given him unexpected defenses. The Keeper moved then, ancient duty overriding damaged systems. It stepped into the containment field directly, absorbing the escaped consciousness back into the Matrix, using its own form as a temporary vessel. The Guardian's body glowed with stolen light, armor cracking under impossible strain. Daniel was at the control panel with Carter, their hands flying across ancient interfaces. The Keeper's sacrifice is buying us time, but not much. Sam, if we reverse the ascension process. It was never completed. There's no reversal, just containment or destruction. Then we give them what the ancients couldn't. Daniel's fingers found a sequence. We don't force ascension. We offer the choice. Consciousness to energy, energy to freedom. Natural ascension, the way the ancients eventually achieved it. Daniel, that's theoretical. So was their experiment. We either try or we destroy them. O'Neill made the command decision. Do it. We've got 30 seconds before that Keeper explodes and takes us with it. Carter and Daniel worked in desperate synchronization, reconfiguring ancient systems designed for imprisonment into a pathway to freedom. The chamber filled with sound. Harmonics from the Keeper, screams from the crystal, and something else, a frequency that resonated with higher dimensions. The crystal blazed white-hot. The Keeper's body began disintegrating, its consciousness joining with those it had guarded for so long. And then, impossibly, the light changed. It stopped being trapped energy and became something purposeful, ascending. One by one, the consciousnesses in the crystal found the path Daniel and Carter had opened. They rose through dimensions, leaving physical reality behind, finally achieving what the ancients' experiment had promised but failed to deliver. The chamber filled with light that had no color and sound that had no frequency. Steve's bionic eye captured data it couldn't process. And then silence. The crystal shattered into dust. The containment field collapsed. The keeper was gone. Bigfoot stood slowly, system stabilized, and made a single harmonic sound. Steve's ear translated it, free. All free. The facility powered down around them, ancient systems finally allowed to rest after millions of years of operation. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting long shadows across the empty containment chamber. Where the crystal had been, only a fine crystalline dust remained, glittering in the dim light. Daniel sat against the wall, exhausted, glasses fogged from sweat. We just helped thousands of ancient beings achieve ascension. That actually worked. Don't sound so surprised, Carter said, though her own hands were shaking slightly. Your theory was sound. The ancients' mistake was forcing the process. We just opened the door and let them choose. O'Neill performed a tactical sweep of the chamber, confirming no immediate threats. Great. Everybody's ascended and happy. Now let's get out of here before something else tries to kill us. Steve helped Bigfoot to his feet. The Android systems were still recalibrating from the consciousness invasion, but he seemed stable. You okay? Bigfoot nodded, then gestured to where the keeper had made its final stand. His harmonics carried a tone Steve's ear interpreted as respect and mourning. The keeper had fulfilled its duty to the end, and in doing so, had freed itself and those it guarded. He's honoring the keeper, Steve said quietly. It died completing its mission. Tilk bowed his head slightly. A warrior's death. There is honor in such sacrifice. They were halfway back to the gate when Carter's scanner picked up new readings. Colonel, I'm detecting energy signatures approaching from orbit. Multiple contacts. Hot-tack design. Goa'uld. O'Neill spat. Perfect timing. How many? 2 motherships. They're entering orbital insertion now. Steve's tactical training kicked in. They detected the energy discharge from the ascension. How long until they can gate ground forces? Minutes, maybe less. They could also just bombard the facility from orbit. Carter adjusted her scanner. Sir, we need to move. Now. They ran. Through twisted corridors, past warning symbols that no longer mattered, racing against an enemy that commanded technology beyond Earth's capabilities. Steve's bionic legs gave him speed, but he stayed with the group, covering their 6 with his P-90. They burst from the facility into the gray wasteland just as the first Goa'uld death gliders screamed overhead. Staff weapon blasts cratered the ground around them. Go, go, go! O'Neill shouted, returning fire with his P-90. The bullets were useless against the fighters, but the gesture was defiant. Daniel reached the DHD first, fingers flying across the symbols to dial Earth. The gate began activating, chevrons locking in sequence. Incoming! Tilk called. Aukesh bombers dropped from the clouds, their forward weapons charging. Teltac cargo ships began landing between the team and the gate, hatches opening to deploy Jaffa warriors in ceremonial armor. Kree Tal Shak! The Jaffa commander shouted. Surrender or be destroyed! Steve counted quickly. 20 Jaffa, more landing, fighters overhead, bombers charging weapons. Impossible odds by any calculation. We don't have time for this. O'Neill muttered, then raised his voice. SG-1, suppressing fire! Get to that gate! They opened up. P-90S and Tilk's staff weapon against Jaffa armor and energy shields. Steve's bionic eye tracked targets automatically, his aim computer precise. 3 Jaffa went down before they could raise their weapons. But more kept coming. Bigfoot roared, a sound that carried across the battlefield and made even the Jaffa pause. Then the android charged. 8 feet of alien technology moving with speed that shouldn't be possible for something his size, he crashed into the Jaffa line like a wrecking ball. He grabbed a warrior in each hand and threw them into their companions. Staff weapon blasts struck his chest and arms, scorching but not penetrating his advanced armor plating. He swept through them, creating chaos and an opening. "Through the gate!" O'Neill ordered. "Austin, get him moving!" Steve ran toward Bigfoot, dodging staff blasts. "We're leaving! Now!" Bigfoot turned from the Jaffa he'd been scattering, understood, and followed. They sprinted for the gate as Carter dialed the final chevron. "Chevron 7, locked!" she shouted over the chaos. The event horizon erupted, and Daniel dove through. Carter followed, then Tilk, laying down covering fire. An Al-Kesh bomber's weapons reached full charge. The targeting system locked onto the gate. "Move!" Steve tackled Bigfoot toward the event horizon as the bomber fired. Staff cannon blasts tore through the space they just occupied, superheating the ground to glass. O'Neill was last through, rolling through the gate as the bombardment intensified behind him. The wormhole collapsed seconds later, severing the connection just as Goa'uld warriors charged the gate on P2X338. They materialized in SGC's gate room in a heap of equipment and personnel. Alarms were already sounding, unscheduled return, combat indicators, medical teams scrambling. "Close the iris!" Hammond's voice boomed from the control room. "Medical teams to the gate room!" Steve sat up slowly, checking himself for injuries. His bionic systems had taken strain but nothing critical. Beside him, Bigfoot was already standing, scanning for threats before recognizing they were safe. O'Neill was the last to his feet, accepting a hand up from Tilk. "Well, that went great. We freed ancient consciousnesses, made them ascend, and pissed off the Goa'uld. Standard Tuesday." "Sir, the Goa'uld now know about that facility," Carter said. "They'll investigate. They'll find the research data, the containment technology. Which won't help them because the subjects are gone and we're not giving them a chance to reverse engineer it." O'Neill looked at Hammond. "Sir, I recommend we dial back in with a GDO and remote detonate C4 charges. Collapse the facility, bury everything." Hammond nodded grimly. "Agreed. But first, debriefing. And I want to know which system lord just tried to kill my people." The debriefing lasted 2 hours. Steve recounted everything with the precision of his OSI training, his bionic eyes recordings providing visual confirmation of events. The images of the crystal, the Keeper's sacrifice, and the ascension were studied by every scientist SGC could spare. Dr. Fraser's examination confirmed Steve's bionics had held up well under stress, though she recommended recalibration of his optical systems. "The ancient technology interfered with your sensors. We should run a full diagnostic." "Agreed," Steve said. "But doctor, what about Bigfoot? He took direct hits from Goa'uld weapons. Superficial damage to his exterior plating. Whatever his creators use for construction, it's remarkably resilient. He'll need some repairs to damaged systems, but structurally he's sound." In the corridor outside the infirmary, Steve found Daniel waiting. "Colonel Austin," Daniel said, "what we did in that facility, helping those consciousnesses ascend instead of destroying them, that was the right choice. But it's going to have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The Goa'uld saw what happened. They'll want that technology. And there are other Watcher facilities out there, other Guardians like Bigfoot maintaining containment on things the Ancients locked away." Daniel's expression was serious behind his glasses. "We just opened a door. Other system lords will start searching for Watcher sites, trying to weaponize whatever they find." Steve absorbed that. "So we stopped one crisis and potentially started another. Welcome to the Stargate program. We specialize in complicated victories." Daniel started walking, and Steve fell into step beside him. "But for what it's worth, you and Bigfoot performed well under pressure. You fit with this team. I'm from another reality, Daniel. This isn't my fight." "Isn't it?" you're here now. You've seen what's at stake. And unless we find a way to send you back, which might not be possible, you're part of this whether you chose it or not." They reached the commissary where O'Neill was already working through coffee and complaining about paperwork. Carter was explaining something technical to Tilk, who listened with patient attention. Bigfoot sat slightly apart, too large for the standard furniture but attempting to integrate. It looked, Steve realized, like a team. Dysfunctional, strange, composed of humans and aliens and bionic men and androids from alternate realities. But a team. O'Neill noticed them and waved them over. "Austin, big guy, grab some food." Carter's about to explain why the Goa'uld are going to be very interested in us now, and I prefer bad news on a full stomach. Steve sat down, and Bigfoot settled beside him. Through the commissary window, he could see the gate room below, that impossible ring that connected worlds and brought strangers together in common cause. He'd been pulled into this universe by accident. But maybe, just maybe, there was a reason. And somewhere in orbit above a dozen worlds, Goa'uld System Lords were receiving reports about new technology, ancient guardians, and an Earth team that was becoming increasingly troublesome. The war was about to get personal. The NID arrived 3 days later. Steve was in the SGC gym, running through maintenance exercises for his bionic systems, strength tests, calibration checks, reaction time measurements. His right arm could press 500 pounds when properly maintained. Today it felt sluggish, the strain from gate travel and combat still affecting performance. Bigfoot watched from the corner, his presence now familiar enough that base personnel had stopped staring. The android had become something of a fixture, helping the engineering teams move heavy equipment and providing Dr. Lee with unprecedented data on Watcher technology. The gym doors opened, and 3 men in dark suits entered with the kind of authority that made Steve's instincts flare. Not military, something else. The lead agent was thin, sharp-featured, carrying a briefcase like a weapon. "Colonel Austin," the man said without preamble. "I'm Agent Malcolm Barrett, NID. We need to talk about your unique capabilities." Steve set down the weight bar carefully. "NID? National Intelligence Department. We handle threats to national security that conventional military can't address, including acquiring and securing alien technology." Barrett's eyes shifted to Bigfoot. "And we're very interested in both of you. Colonel Austin and his companion are under SGC jurisdiction." Tilk's voice came from the doorway. The Jaffa warrior stood with staff weapon in hand, not quite threatening but definitely not welcoming. "You have no authority here." "Actually, we do." Barrett produced documents. "Executive authorization. The President wants the bionic technology and the alien android transferred to NID custody for comprehensive study. For Earth's protection." Steve's jaw tightened. He dealt with power-hungry intelligence agencies before. The OSI had its share of bureaucrats who saw people as assets. "I'm not technology to be studied. And Bigfoot isn't property to be transferred. Colonel, you're a visitor from another reality with cybernetic enhancements decades ahead of our current capabilities. The android is alien technology that predates human civilization. In the wrong hands? They're already in the right hands." Carter's voice cut in sharply. She'd entered behind Tilk, along with Daniel and O'Neill. "And you're not taking them anywhere, Barrett." Barrett smiled thinly. "Captain Carter. Still obstructing legitimate intelligence operations, I see. Still stealing alien tech for off-book programs?" Carter countered. "We know about your unauthorized experiments. The trust infiltration. You want to talk about wrong hands?" O'Neill stepped forward, deceptively casual. "Here's what's going to happen, Barrett. You're going to take your executive authorization, file it somewhere anatomically improbable, and leave my people alone." "Your people? Austin isn't even from this reality. He has no legal status, no citizenship, no rights under our laws." "And the android?" Bigfoot stood. The movement was quiet but massive, 8 feet of alien guardian rising to full height. He made a low harmonic sound that Steve's ear interpreted as a warning growl. Barrett's agents reached for concealed weapons. Tilk raised his staff weapon. The temperature in the gym dropped several degrees. "Stand down." Hammond's voice boomed from the entrance. The general strode in with a kind of command presence that made even NID agents hesitate. "All of you. Barrett, my office. Now." Steve waited outside Hammond's office with the rest of SG-1, listening to raised voices through the door. Bigfoot sat on the floor, too large for the chairs, processing the situation with what Steve had learned to recognize as concerned calculation. "NID's been after alien tech since the program started," Daniel explained quietly. "They see everything as a weapon or an asset. They've stolen technology, conducted illegal experiments, even been infiltrated by the Goa'uld. The Trust," Carter added. "Rogue NID agents who were taken as hosts. They're still out there, operating in the shadows. If Barrett gets control of you and Bigfoot, they'll reverse engineer his bionics and try to weaponize Bigfoot's systems," O'Neill finished. "Standard bad guy playbook. Which is why it's not happening." The office door opened. Hammond emerged, followed by a very unhappy Barrett. "Colonel Austin," Hammond said formally, "Agent Barrett's authorization has been clarified. You and your companion remain under SGC jurisdiction as consultants with guest status. NID will have no access to you without my explicit approval and your consent." Barrett's expression was controlled fury. "General, you're making a mistake. The technology these two represent is protected under the same classifications as all Stargate-related assets. Take it up with the President if you disagree." "Dismissed, Agent Barrett." The NID agents left, but Barrett's parting look at Steve carried clear meaning. This isn't over. When they were gone, Hammond's formal demeanor cracked slightly. "Colonel Austin, I apologize for that. The NID serves a purpose, but they tend to see people as resources rather than allies. I'm familiar with the type, General. The OSI had similar issues." Steve glanced at Bigfoot. "But this confirms what I suspected. We're liabilities as long as we're seen as unique assets." "Which is why you need to become less unique," Carter said thoughtfully. "Sir, if we could demonstrate that Colonel Austin's bionic technology is incompatible with our manufacturing base, and that Bigfoot's systems are too alien to reverse engineer." "We lie to the NID?" Daniel asked. "We emphasize certain truths," Carter corrected. "Steve's bionics are 1970s-era Earth technology from an alternate timeline. We can't reproduce them because we don't have the specific metallurgy and neural interface protocols his reality developed. It's technically true." "And Bigfoot?" O'Neill asked. "His systems are Watcher technology. We can barely understand ancient tech, and the Watchers predate them. Any attempt to reverse engineer him would take decades and likely destroy him in the process. Also technically true." Steve saw the logic. "Make us scientifically interesting but practically useless for their purposes." "Exactly. We'll prepare a report documenting why attempting to exploit either of you would be futile. It won't stop NID completely, but it'll make you less of a priority." Hammond nodded approval. "Do it. In the meantime, Colonel Austin, I'm officially assigning you and your companion to SG-1 as auxiliary members. It'll give you legitimate status and protection under military regulations." "Sir," O'Neill interjected, "not that I'm complaining, but we're adding a bionic colonel and an 8-foot android to the team roster? That's going to make mission planning interesting." "You've handled Stranger, Colonel. Consider it a field test." Hammond's expression softened slightly. "Austin, I know you didn't choose to be here. But you've proven yourself capable and trustworthy. If we're going to find a way to send you home, we need time. This arrangement protects you while we work on it." Steve considered, then nodded. "Understood, General. We'll pull our weight." Bigfoot made an agreeable harmonic sound and placed one massive hand on Steve's shoulder. The gesture was clear: together. Team. That night, Steve found himself on one of Cheyenne Mountain's external observation platforms, looking at stars that were the same but somehow different from his Earth sky. Bigfoot stood beside him, silent companion in the darkness. "You know what the worst part is?" Steve said quietly. "In my world I was unique. The bionic man. Secret weapon. Here, Carter reverse engineers alien technology before breakfast. Till carries a parasite that gives him superpowers. O'Neill's had ancient knowledge downloaded into his brain. Twice." Bigfoot made a questioning sound. "I'm saying I'm not special here. Just another weird thing in a universe full of weird things." Steve smiled slightly. "And somehow that's freeing. I don't have to be the secret weapon. I can just be part of the team." Bigfoot's harmonics carried agreement and something else, kinship. He'd spent unknown years as a lone guardian, programmed for duty. Now he was choosing his purpose. The door opened behind them. O'Neill emerged with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Steve. "Couldn't sleep either?" "Yeah, and ID visits do that. Barrett's a true believer, thinks the ends justify the means. He'll be back. I can handle Barrett." "I know. I've read your file. Crashed an experimental aircraft, got rebuilt into a superhuman operative, saved the world a dozen times. You're basically me with better hardware." O'Neill sipped his coffee. "But here's the thing about SGC. We don't do lone wolf operations. We're a team. You watch my back, I watch yours. That's how we survive. I've always worked alone. Or with minimal support. Time to learn different. Tomorrow, Carter wants to run integration drills. Get you and Bigfoot comfortable with standard SG team tactics. Think you can handle taking orders from a captain?" Steve smiled. "Captain Carter outranks me scientifically by a mile. I can handle it." "Good answer." O'Neill finished his coffee. "Get some sleep, Austin. We've got a mission briefing at 0800. Takare intelligence suggests a system lord named Ares is searching for Watcher facilities. We're going to make sure he doesn't find any." After O'Neill left, Steve remained on the platform, Bigfoot beside him. Somewhere up in those stars, enemies plotted and allies struggled. Ancient mysteries waited to be discovered. And 2 strangers from another reality were about to become part of Earth's defense. The gate would open tomorrow. They would step through. And whatever waited on the other side, they'd face it as part of SG-1. The briefing at 0800 brought new faces to the table. 2 Takare operatives had arrived through the gate during the night, Malek and Delek, symbiote and host pairs who carried themselves with the distinctive dual nature of their kind. Their eyes flickered occasionally as symbiote and host exchanged control. "System Lord Ares," Malek began, his voice carrying the slight echo of 2 consciousnesses speaking as one, "has been consolidating power since Apophis's death. He's more cunning than most, less megalomaniacal. He's learned from the failures of other system lords." Delek activated a holographic star map. Red markers appeared on a dozen worlds. Takare intelligence indicates Ares has been searching for pre-Goa'uld technology. Ancient weapons, advanced knowledge. 3 weeks ago, his scouts found references to Watcher facilities in a captured ancient database. Steve felt tension ripple through the room. Their mission to P2X338 had drawn exactly the attention they'd feared. "How much does he know?" Hammond asked. "Enough to be dangerous," Malek replied. "He knows the Watchers were contemporaries of the Ancients, that they built Guardians to protect their installations. He's searching for intact facilities, hoping to claim Guardian technology for his Jaffa armies." O'Neill leaned back in his chair. "So we need to find these facilities first and either secure or destroy them." "How many are we talking about?" The ancient database referenced 17 potential sites in this sector alone. Delek said. "We've narrowed the most likely candidates to 3 based on energy signatures and Takare reconnaissance." The map zoomed to highlight 3 worlds: P7J989, MX5-849, and P4C452. Carter studied the data. "Sir, we can't secure 3 sites simultaneously. We need to split the team or bring in additional SG units. SG-3 and SG-5 are available, Hammond said. But I want SG-1 taking point on the most likely target. Malek, which site has the highest probability? P7J989. Takare scouts detected Guardian energy signatures before Ares' forces arrived and drove them off. The facility is active, and Ares has established an orbital blockade. He's preparing a ground assault. Of course he is, O'Neill muttered. So we're running an infiltration op on a planet with Goa'uld orbital superiority. I love Tuesdays. Steve spoke up. General, if Bigfoot can interface with Watcher security systems, he might be able to access the facility before Ares' Jaffa breach it. But we need to get him planetside without alerting the blockade. Tilk nodded thoughtfully. The Takare possess cloaked Teltac vessels. A small insertion team could avoid detection if we approach from the planet's shadow. I can pilot a Teltac, Carter offered. And with Takare help, we can modify the cloak to mask Bigfoot's unique energy signature. Malek exchanged a glance with Delek, the kind of silent communication between symbiote and host that Steve found unsettling and fascinating. We can provide transport and technical support. But if Ares discovers Takare involvement, it will complicate our intelligence operations. Deniability, Daniel said. If things go wrong, you were never there. Standard spy protocol. Hammond made his decision. SG-1, you're authorized for infiltration and reconnaissance. Priority 1. Secure or destroy any Watcher technology before Ares claims it. Priority 2. Intelligence gathering on his forces and capabilities. Rules of engagement. Avoid direct confrontation with superior numbers. If the situation deteriorates, fall back and call for air support. Air support? O'Neill asked. The Prometheus is conducting shakedown trials in this sector, Hammond said, referring to Earth's first operational deep space warship. They can provide fire support if necessary, though I'd prefer not to announce our capabilities to every system lord in the galaxy. Understood, sir. O'Neill stood. SG-1, gear up. Austin, Bigfoot, hope you're ready for your first real mission. It's going to be a rough one. The Teltac cargo ship was cramped with 6 people and one 8-foot android aboard. The Takare had modified the internal space as much as possible, but Bigfoot still had to crouch. Steve sat near the rear hatch, checking his P90 for the 3rd time, a habit from his OSI days that helped calm pre-mission nerves. Carter piloted from the forward compartment with Malek providing navigation. The ship's cloak distorted the view outside, making space appear as shifting darkness punctuated by starlight. They'd entered P7J989's system an hour ago, hugging the shadow of the outer planets to avoid Ares' sensors. 2 Hatak motherships in high orbit, Carter reported. Standard patrol patterns. Multiple Alkesh bombers and Death Glider squadrons. Ares isn't taking chances. Can we slip past? O'Neill asked. If we're very lucky and very quiet. Carter adjusted their approach vector, descending to the night side. The facility's location is in a mountain range near the northern polar region. We'll land 5 clicks out and approach on foot. Steve felt the ship shudder as they hit atmosphere. His bionic systems registered the pressure changes, compensating automatically. Beside him, Bigfoot's systems hummed with increasing intensity. Proximity to another Watcher facility was activating his Guardian protocols. Bigfoot's energy signature is spiking, Malek warned. If the Goa'uld have sensitive enough sensors. They don't, Delek interjected, the symbiote's voice overlapping briefly. We've analyzed their scanning technology. They're looking for Nequada reactors and conventional power sources, not Watcher harmonics. The landing was soft, professional. Carter sat down in a narrow valley surrounded by ice-covered peaks. The rear hatch opened to frigid air, -30 Celsius, Steve's eye reported. His bionics regulated his core temperature, but he'd still need the cold weather gear Carter distributed. Bigfoot didn't need gear. His alien construction was built for any environment. They moved out in tactical formation, Tilk on point with staff weapon, O'Neill and Steve flanking, Carter and Daniel in the middle monitoring equipment, Bigfoot bringing up the rear. The TOC-RA remained with the Teltac, ready for emergency extraction. The facility became visible after 3 kilometers. A structure that seemed to grow from the mountain itself, all sharp angles and crystalline surfaces that caught the double moon's light. Unlike P2X338's Dead World, this installation looked pristine, maintained by automated systems Freeans. And surrounding it were Jaffa. Hundreds of them. O'Neill raised his fist, stop signal. The team went to ground behind ice formations, observing the enemy encampment. Tents, supply caches, troop carriers. Ares had deployed a full battalion. "That's not a reconnaissance force," Daniel whispered. "That's an invasion army. And they haven't breached the facility yet," Carter noted, scanning with her equipment. "The entrance is sealed. They're trying to cut through with plasma torches, but the Watcher materials are resisting." Steve zoomed his bionic eye, counting troops and identifying weapons. Heavy resistance. Staff weapons, Modoc staffs for officers, at least 3 plasma cannons set up for siege work. Perimeter guards, patrol rotations every 15 minutes. They're professional. "Any sign of Ares himself?" O'Neill asked. "Negative. But there's a command tent with heavy guard presence. Probably where their field commander is coordinating." Bigfoot touched Steve's shoulder and made quiet harmonics, pointing to a ridge line on the facility's far side. His meaning was clear. "I can reach entrance from there. Avoid main force." "He's right," Tilk said, following Bigfoot's gesture. "That approach is steep but concealed." A small team could reach the facility entrance while the Jaffa focus on their siege equipment. Carter frowned at her scanner. "But even if we get inside, there are hundreds of Jaffa between us and extraction. This could turn into a shooting war very quickly." "Then we'd better make sure it doesn't," O'Neill said. "Carter, Daniel, you're with me and Austin. We're going in through Bigfoot's route. Tilk, I need you to create a distraction. Nothing that compromises the mission, just something to pull attention away from our approach. I shall create confusion among their ranks," Tilk said with what might have been a slight smile. "The Jaffa fear many things. I shall give them reason to look in the wrong direction." The Jaffa warrior moved off into the darkness with the kind of stealth that belied his size. Steve watched him go with professional respect. Tilk was a master at his craft. "All right, campers," O'Neill said quietly. "We move in 5. Austin, keep your bionic eye recording everything. If Ares has new tech or tactics, intelligence needs to know. Bigfoot, when we reach that entrance, work your guardian magic. Fast and quiet." Steve checked his weapon one more time, then nodded readiness. Somewhere in the Jaffa encampment, Tilk was about to cause chaos. And SG-1 was about to infiltrate a fortified position against overwhelming odds. Just another Tuesday at Stargate Command. The explosion came from the Jaffa fuel depot, a brilliant orange fireball that lit the night sky and sent warriors scrambling in every direction. Tilk's distraction was characteristically efficient. "Go, go, go!" O'Neill hissed, and they moved. Steve's bionic legs carried him up the steep ridge with mechanical precision, finding purchase on ice-slick stone that would have challenged normal soldiers. Behind him, Carter and Daniel struggled with the climb, while Bigfoot moved with surprising agility for his size. O'Neill brought up the rear, covering their approach. Secondary explosions echoed through the valley as Tilk's sabotage triggered chain reactions. Jaffa commanders shouted orders, trying to organize a response while their supplies burned. They reached the facility entrance, a massive door inscribed with Watcher symbols that pulsed with faint blue light. Up close, Steve could see where the Jaffa had attempted to breach it. Plasma torch marks scarred the surface, but the material had barely been scratched. Bigfoot placed both hands against the door. His systems flared with energy, harmonics resonating with the ancient security protocols. The symbols began to glow brighter, responding to the Guardian's presence. Carter, how long? O'Neill asked, scanning the approach for pursuit. Bigfoot's interfacing with the security system. The Watcher protocols are complex. It's like a digital handshake between ancient systems. Give him 30 seconds. They didn't have 30 seconds. Jaffa. On the ridge. A patrol had spotted them despite the chaos below. Staff weapons raised, energy crackling at the tips. Contact. Steve dropped to one knee, P90 coming up smooth and professional. 3-round bursts center mass, just like Carter had drilled into him. The first Jaffa went down, armor sparking. The second staggered but kept coming. The symbiote's healing was fast. Tilk appeared behind the Jaffa patrol like a vengeful shadow, staff weapons swinging in close combat. 2 warriors fell before they knew he was there. He fired his staff weapon into the remaining soldiers, plasma bolts precise and lethal. The entrance, O'Neill! Tilk called, holding the approach. I cannot hold this position long. The door split open with a sound like glaciers grinding. Ancient atmosphere rushed out, stale but breathable. Bigfoot gestured urgently, inside now. They piled through the entrance just as more Jaffa crested the ridge. Staff blasts cratered the stone around the doorway. Tilk rolled through last, and Bigfoot's hand slammed against an internal control panel. The door sealed shut with a boom that echoed through the facility. Everybody okay? O'Neill asked, doing a quick head count in the dim, emergency lighting. Intact, Tilk confirmed. But the Jaffa will breach this door eventually. They have heavy plasma cutters. Then we work fast. Carter activated her scanner, mapping the facility's layout. The main power core is 3 levels down. If we can access the Watcher database, we can determine what technology is here and whether we can move it before Ares claims it. The facility's interior was pristine, not abandoned like P2X338, but maintained by systems that still functioned after millions of years. Lighting activated as they moved, responding to their presence. Holographic interfaces flickered to life showing ancient and Watcher text. Daniel was immediately absorbed, recording symbols with his camera. This is incredible. The facility is a research station, collaborative work between ancients and Watchers on energy manipulation and dimensional physics. They were trying to understand the fundamental forces of the universe. And they built what? O'Neill asked. Another doomsday device? A power source. A stable dimensional tap that could draw unlimited energy from subspace. Carter's voice was awed. If this works, it would make CPMs look like batteries. Steve's tactical instincts screamed warning. Which is exactly what Ares wants. Unlimited power means unlimited capability for his fleet. A massive boom shook the facility. The Jaffa had brought their siege weapons to bear on the entrance. We have maybe 10 minutes before they breach, O'Neill estimated. Carter, can we destroy this place? Sir, the dimensional tap is stable now, but if we destabilize it incorrectly, we could tear a hole in space-time. The explosion would take out this planet and possibly affect neighboring systems. So we can't blow it up. Great. Other options? Bigfoot had moved to a central control column, his hands interfacing with Watcher technology. Holographic displays erupted around him, showing systems and protocols that predated human language. He made urgent harmonics. He's accessing the self-destruct sequence. Daniel translated from the symbols appearing. The Watchers built a failsafe, a controlled shutdown that safely disperses the dimensional tap's energy over decades instead of seconds. It will destroy the technology but spare the planet. Do it, O'Neill ordered. Bigfoot, activate shutdown. The android's hands moved across the interface with increasing speed. Steve watched the symbols cascade, his bionic eye recording everything even though he understood none of it. Then Bigfoot paused, his systems humming with distress. What's wrong? Steve asked. More symbols appeared. Carter read them, her face going pale. The shutdown requires continuous manual control. Someone has to stay here and guide the process through completion. It takes 6 hours. The implications hit like a physical blow. 6 hours, with the Jaffa army outside ready to breach. Whoever stayed was facing death or capture. How many people? O'Neill asked quietly. 1. The system is designed for a single Guardian operator. Bigfoot turned to face them. His harmonics were calm, resolved. He touched his chest, then gestured to the team, then back to the controls. The meaning was crystal clear. I will stay. You will leave. Absolutely not, Steve said immediately. We'll find another way. We can hold the facility until... Bigfoot placed one massive hand on Steve's shoulder and made gentle sounds. Steve's ear translated the harmonics. This is Guardian's purpose. Protect. Serve. Choose this. Honor this. He's right, Toke said softly. A warrior understands duty. He has made his choice. There has to be another option. Carter was checking her scanner frantically. Maybe if we can remote access the controls or set up a delayed sequence. Another explosion closer. The entrance was failing. Carter, O'Neill said, his voice carrying the weight of command decisions that would haunt him. Is there another option? She looked at her scanner, at Bigfoot, at the readouts. Finally, she shook her head. No, sir. The system requires continuous conscious oversight. It was designed that way intentionally, a safeguard against automated failure. O'Neill turned to Bigfoot. You understand what you're volunteering for? 6 hours alone against an army. Even if the shutdown completes, the facility will still be structurally intact. Ares will capture you. Bigfoot nodded slowly. Then he moved to the entrance controls and opened an access panel, revealing the Stargate address for this world inscribed on an ancient data crystal. He carefully removed it and handed it to Steve. The gesture was final. Go home. Tell my story. Remember. Steve took the crystal with shaking hands. I won't forget you. I promise. Bigfoot touched his forehead to Steve's in what might have been a watcher gesture of farewell. Then he turned back to the controls and began the shutdown sequence. The facility hummed with power as ancient systems engaged. We need to leave, Daniel said quietly. Now, while the Jaffa are focused on the main entrance. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the surface half a kilometer from their perimeter. O'Neill gripped his P90 tighter. Move out. That's an order. They ran through corridors that were beginning to pulse with the dimensional tap's controlled discharge. Behind them, Bigfoot stood alone at the controls, a guardian fulfilling his purpose one final time. The maintenance tunnel was narrow, barely tall enough for humans. They emerged into freezing night air a kilometer from the facility. Behind them, the Jaffa had breached the main entrance. Warriors poured inside, finding only an empty facility and a lone guardian who would hold them off for 6 hours before the technology they sought dissolved into harmless energy. The Teltac was waiting. They scrambled aboard, and Carter lifted off with Goa'uld death gliders already scrambling to intercept. Takari vessel departing P7J989. Malik transmitted to the Prometheus. Request immediate fire support. The response was instant. Earth's warship dropped from hyperspace with Asgard-designed weapons blazing. Rail guns tore through one Hotak's shields while missiles overwhelmed the other's defenses. The death gliders scattered. In the chaos, the Teltac escaped to hyperspace. Steve sat in the cargo bay, holding the ancient crystal, staring at nothing. They'd completed the mission. The technology was destroyed. Earth was safe. But they'd left a friend behind to die. The debriefing room felt emptier without Bigfoot's massive presence. Steve sat at the conference table, the ancient data crystal sitting in front of him like an accusation. 48 hours had passed since P7J989. 48 hours of reports, medical checks, and a silence that felt heavier than any mission briefing. Hammond stood at the head of the table, his expression grave. Takare intelligence confirms the dimensional tap's controlled shutdown completed successfully. The facility is now inert, useless to Ares or any other system lord. The mission was a complete success. Doesn't feel like success. O'Neill muttered. No. Hammond agreed quietly. It rarely does when we lose people. But the alternative would have been System Lord Ares wielding technology that could have shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. Your team prevented that. Carter pulled up sensor data on the screen. Sir, there's something else. During the shutdown, we detected a massive energy surge from the facility, far beyond what the dimensional tap should have produced. It lasted approximately 3 seconds before dissipating. What caused it? Daniel asked. Unknown. But the energy signature was consistent with Asgard beaming technology mixed with ancient transporter systems. Whatever it was, it happened right before the Jaffa reached the control room. Steve felt something stir in his chest. Not quite hope, but not despair either. Could Bigfoot have transported himself out? Watcher Guardians don't have built-in transport capability, Carter said carefully. But if the facility had emergency evacuation systems, and if he could access them in the final seconds before shutdown, she trailed off. It's possible. But we have no confirmation. The Tok'are are monitoring Goa'uld communications, Malek added via hologram from the Tok'are homeworld. Ares's forces reported finding the facility empty except for automated systems. No Guardian, no bodies. Either he was vaporized in the shutdown, or he escaped. We cannot know which. Tilk spoke with quiet conviction. Bigfoot was a warrior who understood sacrifice. Whether he survived or fell, he earned honor. That is what matters. That, and the intelligence you gathered, Hammond said, changing focus with professional necessity. Colonel Austin, your bionic eyes recordings have given us unprecedented data on Ares's forces, tactics, and equipment. We're forwarding this to all SG teams and allied forces. Steve nodded mechanically. The mission parameters had been met. The technology was destroyed. Intelligence was secured. In OSI terms, this was a textbook success. But it still felt like failure. Hammond's expression softened slightly. Colonel Austin, you've been with us for 2 weeks. You've participated in First Contact, ancient technology recovery, combat operations, and now a sacrifice mission. You've earned your place here, if you choose to stay. But I understand if you want to focus on finding a way home. Steve looked at the ancient crystal, the gate address Bigfoot had given him. A keepsake from a friend who might be dead. General, have we made any progress on dimensional travel? On sending me back? Carter shook her head. The threadweaver that brought you here was unique. We've found references to similar devices in the ancient database, but nothing concrete. It could take months or years to develop the technology. And even then, there's no guarantee we could send you to your specific reality instead of another parallel Earth. So I'm stuck here. For the foreseeable future. Hammond confirmed. Which brings me to my next point. Colonel Austin, I'm offering you permanent assignment to SG-1 as a special consultant. It comes with rank recognition, clearance, and all the benefits and responsibilities of serving with Earth's flagship team. You've proven yourself capable. The question is whether you want this. Steve considered. In his world, he'd been a lone operative, the secret weapon Oscar Goldman deployed when normal methods failed. Here, he was part of a team, just another member of humanity's defense against impossible odds. What about Bigfoot? Steve asked. If he's alive somewhere, then we'll find him, O'Neill said firmly. We don't leave people behind. It might take time, but if that big guy survived, we'll track him down. That's what teams do. Daniel leaned forward. Steve, you're not replacing Bigfoot by accepting this position. You're honoring what he gave his life, or freedom, to protect. This facility, these people, this fight. He believed it was worth the sacrifice. Tilk inclined his head. You would make a worthy addition to SG-1, Colonel Austin. Your skills complement our own. And your heart is that of a warrior who fights for others, not glory. Such men are rare. Carter smiled slightly. Plus, having someone who can actually keep up with the Colonel's running pace would be useful. And your technical knowledge of your reality's engineering could help us develop new approaches to problems we've been stuck on. Steve looked around the table at faces that had become familiar. O'Neill with his dry humor masking deep compassion. Carter's brilliant mind and Soldier's discipline. Daniel's idealism tempered by hard experience. Tilk's honor and quiet strength. Hammond's leadership. This wasn't his Earth. But maybe it could be his fight. I accept, General. With one condition. Name it. Steve held up the ancient crystal. We keep looking for Bigfoot. And for a way home, not just for me, but for him too. If he's alive and trapped somewhere, he deserves the same chance to go home that you're giving me by trying to send me back. Hammond extended his hand across the table. Agreed. Welcome to Stargate Command, Colonel Austin. Officially. Steve shook it, feeling the weight of commitment settle on his shoulders. In his world, he'd crashed an experimental aircraft and been rebuilt as something more than human. Here, he'd been pulled through dimensions into a war he hadn't chosen. But choice wasn't about how you arrived. It was about what you did once you were there. 3 days later, Steve stood in the gate room as the Stargate activated. SG-1 was deploying to P3R-233 for treaty negotiations with the Takare. Standard diplomatic mission, low risk, perfect for a newly official team member's first assignment under permanent orders. Chevron 7, locked. The event horizon exploded into existence. Steve checked his P-91 final time, feeling the comfortable weight of the weapon. His bionic systems were fully calibrated now, adapted to this universe's physics. He was ready. You good? O'Neill asked beside him. Getting there, sir. It's Jack. We don't stand on formality when we're about to walk through a puddle to another planet. And Austin? Yeah? He made his choice. Honor it by living, not by guilt. That's an order. Steve nodded, throat tight. Then they were moving up the ramp, O'Neill, Carter, Daniel, Tilk, and now Steve. 5 people who'd become a team through impossible circumstances. They stepped through the Stargate together. On the other side, an alien world waited with new challenges, new dangers, new mysteries. The war against the Goa'uld continued. Ancient technology still waited to be discovered. And somewhere in the galaxy, a Guardian might still be fighting to come home. But today, SG-1 had a mission. And Colonel Steve Austin, the $6 million man from another reality, was part of that team now. The gate shut down behind them with its familiar whoosh of disengaging wormhole. Steve's bionic eye recorded the alien landscape automatically. Twin suns, purple vegetation, a Takare scout ship waiting on the horizon. Welcome to the team, Carter said, smiling. Try not to get killed on your first official mission. I'll do my best, Captain. They moved out across alien terrain, 5 humans defending a Earth that most people didn't know was at war. It wasn't the life Steve had planned. It wasn't the world he'd been born to. But it was the mission he'd chosen. And in the SGC records filed under Allied Personnel, Auxiliary Status, 2 entries remained active. Colonel Steve Austin, SG-1 Special Consultant. Guardian Designation, Bigfoot Status, Missing in Action. The Stargate would open again tomorrow. New worlds would be explored. New threats would emerge. And somewhere in the database, an algorithm Carter had written continued searching gate addresses and energy signatures for any trace of a missing Guardian. Because SG-1 didn't leave people behind. Even when the odds were impossible. Even when years might pass before answers came. That was what it meant to be part of a team. Steve adjusted his tactical vest and followed his new team toward the Takare ship, ready for whatever came next. The stars above were different from his Earth's, but the mission was the same: protect humanity, explore the unknown, and never stop fighting for what mattered. Indeed. Colonel Steve Austin had come through the Stargate by accident, pulled from his reality by ancient technology either he nor his companion had chosen to activate. In 2 weeks, he'd gone from lone operative in a world of secrets to team member in a universe at war. He'd helped free ancient consciousnesses from eternal imprisonment. He'd fought Goa'uld forces and faced alien technologies beyond his training. He'd watched a friend sacrifice everything to protect a galaxy he barely knew. And he'd found something he never had in his own world, a team that fought not for nations or agencies, but for all of humanity across thousands of worlds. The search for Bigfoot would continue. The Takare maintained their intelligence networks, Carter refined her detection algorithms, and every Gate mission carried the hope that somewhere, somehow, the Guardian had survived and would find his way home. The search for Steve's own reality would continue too, though whether he truly wanted to leave had become a more complicated question with each mission. Because through that ring of ancient metal, stepping from world to world, Colonel Steve Austin had discovered what Oscar Goldman and the OSI could never give him, the knowledge that being rebuilt with technology didn't make him a weapon or a tool. It made him a person who could choose his purpose. And he chose to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to explore the unknown, to honor sacrifice, to be part of something larger than any single world or reality. SG-1's next mission briefing would come tomorrow. Another Gate address. Another alien world. Another impossible situation requiring teamwork, ingenuity, and the courage to step through a pool of shimmering energy into the unknown. Steve Austin would be there. Not because he was ordered to be, but because he'd found his place in a universe that needed bionic men and ascended ancients, Jaffa warriors and brilliant scientists, dry-humored colonels and idealistic archaeologists working together. The Stargate would keep turning. The war would continue. And somewhere in the vast network of worlds connected by ancient technology, a Guardian might still be fighting to return. But that was a story for another day. Today, SG-1 had a mission. And Colonel Steve Austin, the $6 million man from Earth, just not this Earth, was honored to serve. Indeed. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching.